I haven't gone there. All right, this is the Park Commission meeting of August 25th. Quick roll call. Dave Passios is here.
Here.
Great.
My
And
phone.
Karen Menard. Kayla Wright is stuck in traffic, and Susanna has a work meeting, so she may be late. So let me do the quick spiel. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel, and that this meeting of the Lunenburg Park Commission is being conducted remotely. Accordingly, for those that are participating via video, please be aware that the other folks may be able to see you, and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured in the recording. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town website on the COVID-19 Information Center page, can be accessed through the town manager's webpage and allows for public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law, and we do have public and board comment on the agenda for tonight. So let's get this rolling since it's just the two of us. I do see that Mr. Alonso is on and we have one other caller on. If anybody wants to have put a public comment in at any point during this meeting, you don't need to wait to the end. Feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself and join in. That's welcome here on the Park Commission. So the first thing I have down is the approval of the July and August 2020 minutes. Did you get those, Dave?
Yes, I did. Yep. Everything was fine in them as far as I could see.
Okay, and I have no changes for myself. So I will make a motion to approve the July and August 2020 minutes.
Second.
So I guess we need to do a roll call vote for the two of us. Dave?
Aye.
And an aye from myself, so those have passed. I'm not sure how we want to handle some of this stuff with Kayla not here. So we normally would have the town manager, DPW director, recreation director updates. Do we want to skip over that or review the email that she sent from the other day?
I kind of breezed through it real quick earlier today, so I think we're going to have to postpone till Kayla's here to go through it. I had a couple of questions, but like I say, I don't have access to it right now, so.
Yep. And
we'll
she's
have to
not here
let it run.
anyway to answer those, so it probably is, I wouldn't have the answers anyway, so we'll skip over that. And the same thing with the beach updates, although I will say that I did talk to her briefly. It seems that everything is still going okay at the beach. She sent along the numbers the other day, and some of the weeks have had a good turnout, so I'm happy to see that people are actually using the beach this summer.
Yeah, the overall numbers look pretty good, you know, the totals considering.
Yep, yep. I'd be interested to have her show us how many unique visitors we have and then repeat visitors to see if we're getting new people along or if those are the same people coming every week.
Right.
She can address that with us the next time she's here.
Yep.
All right, so the next one is the open space representative. I did not realize this, that last fall we had put Susanna in that position and she resigned and she didn't let us know. So we have not had a representative on that board. They're picking things back up. They had a meeting last Thursday. And I know they're going to try to meet more often. So we need to select a representative for that. I filled the role previous to Susanna and would be happy to continue and take that role back from her, unless it's something that you want, Dave.
As most people know, I am spread pretty thin between all of my responsibilities via the Finance Committee, being on Parks, TCP Design Committee. I think I'd like to pass at this point, and hopefully in the near future, we'll have a couple more members, and we can see what they'd like to see
Yeah,
at this point.
absolutely. So
I make a motion that we appoint you to represent Parks on the Open Space Committee.
and I will second that. Seems a little odd just to be motioning and seconding for each other. So roll call vote on that, Dave,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. So I will let them know. I was in attendance last Thursday, had to skip out briefly for another meeting, but we'll let them know. So perfect there. I'm also going to ask that we skip over 2020 field usage fees, as I feel that Kayla is the one bringing the presentation to the table. So unless you have something specific that you want to discuss now, I think we should probably table that.
No, again, I need to digest that a little bit more. It was a quick skim through all those documents earlier today.
I would actually like to have it presented twice. So I had reached out to Steve Chow from the Little League to let him know that it was on our agenda, and that it would be discussed tonight, but not decided on tonight. So I'll let him know that we had to push that out a month. So we'll discuss it next month, and then we can decide in October. So perfect there. The next one is the skate park. So I know you followed along with the discussion, Dave, back when this all started, because you were coming to the park commission meetings and you weren't, even though you weren't on the park commission. Just in a quick nutshell, a couple of years ago, a group of middle school students came to us with a Genius Hour project. This project was for a skate park that they wanted to raise money and build. At the time, it was myself and Dennis Minoni who we both thought it was a great idea. We had left it with them. They were going to come back to us when they decided, if they decided on a location that was managed by the Parks Commission. It then sort of took its own turn and had a mind of its own, and it went in front of the Board of Selectmen, who approved them to use the land adjacent to TC Passios. The project also seemed to grow considerably. So the Park Commission in the last year or so have made two motions that unanimously had passed. One of those motions was to say we supported a 5,000 square foot skate park. We didn't have any discussion over location on it at that point, and that unanimously passed. The other discussion was around the location. When we voted on this, I believe it was February timeframe of 2020. None of the commissioners that were then on the board were in favor of the TC Passios location for a variety of reasons, including concerns about parking, concerns about using green space in the center of town, as well as things like maintenance. And a lot of our questions that we had been asked seemed to go unanswered by the skate group. So we had made the decision, like I said, back at the beginning of this year, I believe it was, that we were not going to support that location. In the last couple of weeks, Mr. Alonso and town manager have both reached out wanting to put together a joint meeting with the skate park folks, as well as us and them, to further discuss this and make a plan going forward. I was hesitant, but this is you're new to the board and never made your position officially known. So I wanted everybody to give their input on it and whether they thought it would be a worthy venture to have this group discussion. So that's why it's on the agenda tonight. I'm not sure if you have any strong feelings one way or another, whether you agree with the past decision of the board, or whether or not you want to have a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the skate park folks.
All right. I was present at that meeting in February, and I believe the minutes probably reflect that I was in agreement with the decision of the board. And I actually suggested that it be rolled into the upcoming master plan for Marshall Park. So I'm in total agreement with that vote that was taken in February. I don't know what result is expected to come out of a joint meeting. I think we're kind of in a position where we've made our decision as to what we feel about, how we feel about the location on Memorial Drive. And there are other issues also in that ultimately after it would be built, it would, I'm guessing, end up being or attempting to be turned over to care and custody of parks, which again, we're not interested in. So I'm not sure what result is expected from a joint meeting.
And I'm feeling the same. So I hate to say no to a group of people that are trying to do something positive. I guess I'm looking for them. So this isn't a project that we're spearheading. It's a project that we would have supported, you know, on behalf of the students that were doing this project. And we do think it's a good idea. I'm just cautious to say, I want to do all the legwork on this, or do more legwork on this when I know that there's so many other things that we need to have addressed, from Marshall Park to the fact that we don't have a lot of things for, let's say, the 20-ish year old group all the way up to the, you know, the seniors. We seem to cater to the younger groups of kids, and we're a park and recreation group, and that should entail everybody. So I'm hesitant to put a ton of legwork into something that's gonna, I think is gonna struggle anyway, but would cater to a group of, an age group that we feel that we've already catered to. I don't even know if I'm explaining that right anymore. So I think I can certainly go back. I don't know if Mr. Alonso wants to chime in. I can certainly go back and, you know, ask for some additional details. Tom raised his hand. Let's see. Tom, I think I have you unmuted.
Yep. Thank you for
Thank you.
allowing me. Just to answer the question of what do we hope to achieve in doing this, if the Parks Commission has voted that they are not in favor or support of that, obviously that's an important factor. And there are other factors, and as I'm sure as a member of the TC Pasio's design team, Dave would know, that with that ongoing, there are issues there. The whole point of getting a meeting is that we could, as a group, discuss alternatives that I'm not sure what alternatives were discussed when this site was chosen. But if everybody's in the room, we wouldn't have to wait for a serial amount of meetings to see what people's objections are as different factions. And then we could talk about it and get everybody's support. Obviously, if there's lack of support from one of the groups, it's going to make it harder to move forward. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. We don't want to pit anybody against anybody. We want to, it's a big town, 26 square miles. We should be able to find a place that everybody is amenable to at some point. And that is the goal from my perspective of the meeting.
Okay. So,
if I may, the only response I would have to that is that the skate park committee vetted either 3 or 4 locations, and they were adamant that the present location was the only one that worked for them. And I feel they just didn't get enough pushback at that point to really look at other possible locations. It's difficult to come up with anything in my mind other than Marshall Park as something at least close to the center of town, which is what they're after. And they were after something close to the schools so that users could walk from school after school to the park. But I'm still adamant that the chosen location right now just is not a good location for it.
Agreed. Wish Susanna was here to weigh in. I don't like it to be just two of us. Tom, what were you looking at for meeting dates if we would try to do something?
I mean, no one's close to getting enough money to break ground, so it's not a sense of urgency. So whenever anybody's available, if you wanted to wait till your commission is up to 5 people, I mean, we could do it in the fall, depending on how quickly the charter approval goes through. But it's not urgent for us, but sometime before the end of the year.
Okay. So my instinct is to say, I don't want to do it right now. I just feel like so many of our concerns have gone for over a year unaddressed. And I just feel like we're just gonna sit and have another meeting and everybody's not going to be listening to what we're saying and what we're willing to support. And that I'm just concerned about that. I don't have tons of spare time to say, let's try this again. So I guess based off of what Dave just said, I think that I'd like to wait, I guess, until we get another meeting or two into the fall, get Susanna's thoughts on it as well. Because again, we're such a small board that I think that we all have to be on the same page, or we're not gonna work effectively. So I'd like to see what Susanna's thoughts are on it, and then have the discussion amongst the Parks Commission again to see if it's something that we want to do. And in the meantime, I think this should be going on without us having to say anything, and that is that the skate park knows that we are not in support of the TC Passios location, and I hope that they are exploring other options in other locations, and fully vetting those, so that when they come and have a conversation with us, it's not going to turn into, this is the only location that we want, when they know that we're not supporting it. So, and then hopefully by the fall, we'll also be up to a 5-member board, which again, I think that a 5-member board is going to be more beneficial, to have a larger board weighing in on these. There's always something that we never think about, and that somebody else could bring to the table. So I'm going to say, let's hold off on it, Tom. And then I'll certainly put it on the agenda. If it's not next month, I'll make sure it's on the October agenda. We'll revisit it with Susanna and Dave and figure out when our next members are coming on, and definitely let you know what our plan is. Tom, you don't have to put your hand up. You can just chime in.
Well, I'm just following protocol.
I know you are. Go ahead. Sorry.
So I think that's fine. I think what you've just outlined is fine with us. I mean, we're in the similar position. I have not met with the skate park group myself since I've been back on the board. There have been other things that are way more pressing that have taken up our time as well. And now we have 2 members on our board that are brand new too. So I think of our board, I think there's only 1 member who was there for the original vote that's still on the board. So I think if we wait a couple months, that'd be great. And I think it would be beneficial for all of us, especially if you have the full 5-person commission at that point, that we sit down. I mean, I am not looking, believe me, I know how much time all of us spend on this. I'm not looking to waste anybody's time. I just want to see that if there's a way to go forward. Again, that I can't speak because I don't want to give any position that I have away to my board. But I mean, obviously I'm calling for this because there's a disagreement between the 3 groups. And I want to make sure we get that reconciled, because it's not going to work if one group is not on board with the other 2. So I appreciate your time. I'll probably try to put this on my board's agenda so they can have a discussion, or at least an introductory discussion, that we want to pursue this further. And then when we can see in the next 2 months when we can put something together jointly.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming tonight.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, so that's the plan on that. Did I lose you, Dave?
No, that's all right.
Okay, great. So, yeah, I'm just, like I said, there's two of us. I think having a third opinion, to me is beneficial. So, although I pretty much know what that opinion is since she hasn't budged since this whole discussion came up. So we'll take it up in a couple of months and go from there. The next thing on our agenda is park properties, including but not limited to Marshall Park, the track, and the potential demolition moratorium that you had discussed at our last meeting. So I feel like I've said this before. I don't know the best way to go about handling the Marshall Park redesigned, or what it's going to look like, the future of Marshall Park. I don't know if that's something that we look to Kayla and hand a lot of it to Kayla and say, come up with some ideas for us. I don't know if we want to throw out ideas. I don't know if we want to put together a public forum. We've done it in the past. Everybody's always invited to our meetings, but I did, throw emails out to the people that had specifically talked to me about it. And we did have a decent turnout a couple of years ago when we talked about it. I don't know if we want to think about doing something like that again. I'm not sure. So if you have any opinions on that, please share them.
Yeah, I think the direction that we were kind of pointing towards at the last meeting was for our board to start at this point to come up with its ideas as to what they see, what each individual sees as important points to either rehabilitate, change use, or add use for the Marshall Park property. I've got half a dozen different ideas of additional stuff that can be done, and it starts down at Marshall Pond with a picnic area. There's a small area that abuts Highland Street that could easily be cleaned up, a few picnic tables put in there, and we've already got parking. Long term, if we could possibly get an easement across a little wedge of private property, we could start to be creating trails that connect from that parking area and picnic area into the main property of Marshall Park and develop trails all the way up to the main park. I haven't walked in there in a lot of years, but I'm pretty sure it can be done and avoid the wetlands as necessary for walking trails. I kind of have in the back of my mind too that if we could get the funding and we find a route through there, we could actually develop an ADA accessible trail with a solid gravel base or whatever they use for a base to connect Highland Street with Marshall Park proper. Again, that would take some walking through there with Conservation Commission and trying to find a route that would work coming through there, and then it would require some major funding to create a trail like that. But if we start out with regular walking trails, and as we develop ideas for the park, keep accessibility in mind, I think a lot of things like that could really come to fruition over the next couple of years, maybe. I mean, the whole process, I think, is going to be probably over 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's my thought for the center of town side of the park. I think shorter term, I think the picnic area could be a short-term goal, because that's kind of if you want to call it, as everybody's been saying, a little pocket park. There's not a lot of expense to put a few picnic tables in there. I did mention it to one of the members of CONSCOM a number of months ago, just looking for a personal opinion. And obviously, we'd have to bring the proposal to them or have them help us design it. But that person's thoughts was that it was very doable in that little corner of property that's owned by the town right there at the Marshall Pond parking lot.
Yep.
The existing facilities on the park property itself, we talked about the track. I'd like to see that rehabbed by next spring or late spring. I'd actually would have liked to have seen it tilled and made a little bit more usable already this summer. I think initially it could be just the cinder track rolled firm. You know, there's a lot of organic matter that's grown into the cinders. So somehow, I don't know if you scalp the surface and screen it or what the process is, but get that back to a cinder surface and roll it. And that was, it's used a little bit now for walking, but it could be a really nice 1/8 mile track.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see it used in the wintertime for snowshoeing classes, seminars, or whatever. Nice open area once it's covered with snow. That's something
agree.
I haven't had yet.
Yeah, I agree. Especially, I've brought up doing something over on the Highland Street Park, the Highland Street side before, and doing something like, you know, a pocket park type thing with picnic tables. I think it's in a perfect location from the senior center for those seniors that still walk, that maybe they want to park over at the senior center and walk over because it's, you know, gets them out and about and walking. And it's now that there's the stop signs over, you know, in that Highland area going, you know, on Oak, what is it, Oak and Highland, that stop sign went in. I think it's I think it would be a great opportunity to do something for relatively small money, and there shouldn't be a lot of work involved in doing something like that. Although I say that and then I feel like it comes back and it's a lot of work. So I probably should defer to the experts on that. And I agree on the track. I'm good with a cinder track. I walk the track over in Fitchburg at their big park, and it's, you know, it's a big dirt cinder, I don't know what you want to call it, track over there. It's not a specific like track type surface, but I think that's a great path over there. And I would like to ask Kayla to check in at some point in the next few months with the athletic director and the school to see what we currently know that they're using our fields. Is that their long-term plan, is to continue using those fields, or are they entertaining putting something in on their own property? Because if that happens, then it would drastically reduce the use of especially the 90-foot diamond. I would like to see some sort of rectangular field space go in. It doesn't necessarily have to be a full-size football field or a soccer field if we can't fit it there, but if we can fit something in for some of the youth programming, or some of the adult programming that we've wanted to do, I think that would be beneficial. So should we just keep this on the agenda for a bit and just keep throwing ideas out to Kayla and let her work at creating some sort of plan and determining how she wants to go about creating that master plan?
Yeah, I'm agreeable with that, but like I said before, I think if this commission comes up with its top 10 uses that it would like to see either renovated or added to the property, and Kayla puts that into some type of perspective with her expertise, and then once we get to that point, then we go to the public and say, okay, this is what we've kicked around. What do you think, and what would you like added? What do you not like that we've talked about in our list? And, finalize that list that way.
Yeah.
Then we, at that point, could put together pretty much a master plan as to what that park's going to look like 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now, whatever.
Usage of it, yeah.
And then start hiring a consultant if need be, and start looking at funding through open space. There's still a lot of funding sources out there for projects like that, and even pieces of that project. And the money has not dried up, the best I can tell. Grant money's still flowing at this point. That may change over the next 6 to 12 months, but right now, it's still there. Even the state with the bond bill that they just passed, if that gets fully funded, assuming that, well, it's already been signed, so other than pulling back the funding on it, the money's been committed. There's many millions of dollars built into that bond bill for grants. One category in particular was, I believe, for trails and those types of improvements. So there's still money out there, but we have to have that basic master plan in place before we can even formulate what money we want to go after and for when and for what projects.
Right, and there's definitely grant money. I mean, I know that there is. I've had conversations with a couple of members of the Conservation Commission and can see what they're working on, and some of their projects are being funded by grants. And, you know, in open space previously, we had talked about that. We do have, we have results of the open space survey that I can also pull up and provide to the group at our next meeting, because there were things in there like, what do you as a community, what are important to you, what would you like to see? I don't know who exactly formulated some of the responses that were already there. There was a space for other, where you could fill in something that you know, nobody had thought about that you wanted to add to it. But we can certainly pull up those results and take a look too, and see if there's something there. One of them I know is ice skating. You know, we have that pond, although the pond ice skating in New England is just, it's risky in itself, but we also don't always have cold enough weather to sustain that. But, you know, Kayla could certainly look into putting in, you know, a temporary ice skating rink over at Wallace Park or somewhere within Marshall Park, you know, for winter usage. So there's a lot of great ideas that people had. It's just a matter of getting them out to everybody. So I will pull that together and email it out to everybody, and then we can discuss it at our next meeting as well, and continue coming up with the list of, like you said, the things that are most important to us, and put that together, have a conversation with the public, you know, relook at our list, add stuff if we need to add it, take it off if it's, you know, not something that seems to be going over very well, and then work on getting this master plan done up. But you're right, I think it's going to be a multi-year process, and I also don't want to lose out on capital planning opportunities either. You know, I don't know, I don't remember the deadlines for those, but it'd be nice if we should regularly have something on there. Not that we need to make up projects to say that we want this just to have something proposed on the capital planning side. But I think that if we have legitimate projects, we should have them on there and not wait and wish that we had done it. So we can certainly take care of that. Do you remember what the deadlines are for capital projects proposals?
No, honestly, I do not.
Okay.
There hasn't been a meeting scheduled even so far that I'm aware of going into fall town meeting, and I got the impression that it's going to be mid to late September at the earliest before a lot of that planning is going to start to come together. Although the town manager, I think, has more or less brought together a proposal for, you know, the budget adjustments and stuff like that, and is going to be presenting. Actually, it seems to me the finance committee meeting this Thursday, part of that will be rolled out. I lost my train of thought on something that I was holding. In response to your comment about the 90-foot diamond, and not to tie the superintendent to anything that, you know, it was made in general conversation, but open to the public around. and it might have been even in an open meeting, that the school district was looking at a part of that school property that could potentially fit a field sufficient for their baseball program. I never questioned it or asked any more about it since those comments. I think in the back of my mind, when I go through this thought process, which is weekly about Marshall Park, I keep coming back to, we should put them on notice that if we are going to reconfigure that 90-foot diamond area, that by 2023 or 2024, they need to be ready to operate from a different location.
Yep, agreed. And we can certainly get our feelers out on that and figure out what they're thinking.
The other thing too that I want to, from my perspective about this rehab of Marshall Park, is that no matter what we do with the large areas, especially the 90-foot diamond area, I hope we keep in mind usability as a community gathering area like it used to be. I'm not so sure we could have bonfires up there anymore, but the bonfire was in the outfield of the 90-foot diamond when I was a kid growing up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yep, definitely. And it was with railroad ties and tires back then. So it was quite an event, and all of the concessions were set up on the basically the diamond. And it was a well-attended event, and it was a nice open area that, parking was always an issue because you had such a crowd that you plugged Chestnut Street, you plugged Highland Street, you plugged the Mass Ave side, but it was once or twice a year. So,
Right.
And the whole town turned out for it, so it didn't really matter to the public.
Yep, agreed. And I think that I absolutely agree with you on keeping whatever space we use. Community space, I think, needs to be priority. I think that's important. I look at it and I wish that youth sports were set up so that, one field would take care of everybody. But obviously that's can't happen. It's not realistic. But, I look at these fields and I say, it sits empty. That 90-foot diamond sits empty in the fall. And how do we do something so that it's not sitting empty in the fall? Especially when some of our other organizations that may not be just town organizations, but maybe, some of the private club soccer or softball or whatever, those programs, they may not be 100% Lunenburg kids. They could be the majority of Lunenburg kids, but they're, run through a private organization. They're going elsewhere when this field's sitting empty. And it would be nice if we could get some use on it and have something for Kayla to be able to immediately throw programming out there without having to worry about going back to, whoever is managing the field space that she needs to use, because she needs a rectangular field, not a baseball diamond. So I'm in agreement with you there that it needs to be something that can definitely be used for community purposes. All right, so we'll keep working on that.
Yep.
So the other one that we have is, this is something you brought up last meeting. It's the potential to have a demolition moratorium. I don't know if you've put any more thought into that.
I still feel adamantly that we should put something on the books as a vote of the commission that until such time we either remove it as a commission or I'm not sure where I was going with that, because basically it would only take a vote of the commission to withdraw the moratorium. But I just don't want, and Jack said you're basically doing it to yourself. I'm not going to remove anything, but Jack also clearly stated at the last meeting that he'll be gone before winter on his retirement.
Yep.
That was the first commitment I've heard of a time frame. So you get a new DPW director who still has control, care and custody of the day-to-day operations. I don't want anything more. I'm more concerned about removing structures such as the exercise stations, the old basketball, tennis court, things like that. I want those to be secure as much as they need to be for public safety until such time as we can develop a proposal to either remove them for a reason or to rehab them.
Okay.
And that's my concern. I want to lock those things in place for the time being. And if something becomes, brought to our attention that's a serious public hazard, then we'd have to take those on one by one and say, okay, we're either going to secure them in a way that makes them safe, or we're going to have to do something else.
So let me ask you this. So day to day is what falls under the DPW. I guess I'm looking at it in sort of two different ways. I do agree to some extent that putting something in place for ourselves when we can easily, as a commission, sort of override that seems a little nonsensical to do to ourselves. But I wonder what your thoughts are on, like, do you think that removing any of those would be considered day to day? Because technically that's the only thing that's supposed to be done by the DPW is day to day things. And I guess I'm not necessarily looking at them as being a day to day. Removing something, I don't feel as though it's a day to day situation and it would have to come in front of us. But I'm also wondering if you think a demolition policy may be more what we could build to use for ourselves that would be just as beneficial. To reiterate that demolition of anything doesn't come under a day-to-day activity, and that, and create a policy, because one of the things on our goals that we even have on tonight's agenda is to, come up with goals. And one of those that we discussed last week was coming up with a policy document. And that could be something that goes within that policy document. I guess we can certainly put something on the table for a complete moratorium, but at the end of the day, they could come back to us and say, we want to demolish X, Y, and Z. And as a commission, we could ignore our own demolition moratorium and vote to do that. So I'm wondering if a policy is really what we're looking for.
Yeah, I think we could vote with cause, but what I want to put in place is something that deters any entity, any person, whatever, coming before the board and saying, we want to rip this out because it hasn't been maintained, until we get a chance to fully vet what's presently there, and not just Marshall. As I've said before, I'm partial to knowledge of Marshall Park because I grew up in that neighborhood. But there are other things at other properties that, are also potential issues. I just don't want to, I want to make it difficult and deter any entity or person coming before the board to ask for a demolition or removal permission from the commission by having this in place, as well as, tying the hands of the commission a little bit, just so that we think 2 or 3 times before we remove something or demolish something. Because, 2 years from now, that might work very well. What we remove might work very well into our long-range plan for rehab.
Right.
So that's more why I want to put it in there. And, Jack's right. He's not going to rip anything out unless he comes to us. But we've got more than just Jack to be thinking about coming before the board for that type of purpose.
Yeah.
No, I'm not interested in anything definitive even tonight. I kind of feel that it could be worked into that policy document as long as it's got a little bit of teeth to it.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't need to be a standalone thing, but if it's in the policy document, then it will protect these structures for the time being. And then we start, you know, aggressively working on the rehabilitation and or reuse of certain areas. It's like the basketball courts. I'm really not sure what the general public would like to see back there.
Right.
I mean, it was tennis courts when I was a kid. It was converted to basketball courts in my midlife. It's just a rundown place right now that is rehabable for those similar uses. Or could we change the use completely and look at some of the uses that were asked for at Wallace Park on that basketball area and be incorporated into that fenced-in area?
Right. Right.
And you know, that would help bring the public to that park, especially kid-friendly activities that could be done within a fenced area like that.
Yeah.
So those are my thought process. I'm just throwing out everything
Yeah.
that's in my head and has been for years.
It's not even that I disagree with it. I guess I don't know. I guess for me, I'd be leaning to making something more policy related so that this is, you know, that the discussions will be had, and that, you know, also making sure that something ends up in our policy so that things are not falling into complete disrepair, so that we're not going to be faced with the situation of the bathhouse where it needed to come down because of disrepair. You know, I would like to create some sort of policy, you know, complete with our expectations of what, you know, what we expect for maintenance in these facilities so that they don't crumble around us, and we end up faced with, you know, ripping down another building.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I guess I'd like to take a little bit more time, and not that I want to keep kicking the can down the road. I'd like to, for me personally, I'd like to look at some wording of maybe, and you know, if any other Parks and Rec departments have something about demolition, maybe Kayla knows, maybe in her previous experience they had something, and sort of compare apples to oranges or apples to apples, I guess is what we'd want to compare, of what a demolition moratorium versus a policy over demolition, what the differences would be and which one, you know, we'd be in favor of, so that we're not making decisions last minute.
Right. And demolition isn't as important to me as removal of, and I'm at a loss for what that noun is that I'm looking for. But removal of apparatus, I guess.
Yep.
You know, that type of thing. Unless, like I said, if it's an acute danger to the public, then we either need to fence it off, or we may be forced to vote to remove it or repair it so it's usable and not a danger to the public.
Right. Yep.
The other point I'd like to make is that every year, money from the parks budget flows to free cash because it's almost never used up completely.
Yep.
And in some years, a substantial amount has gone back into free cash because it's not been used.
Right.
When we have facilities and structures crumbling in these parks. And that kind of feeds into a comment that was made by the town manager at the Board of Selectmen's meeting just recently, that talking about the DPW department in general being severely understaffed and not able to complete their tasks as DPW projects require because their resources have been tied up working on cemeteries and parks. Well, right off the bat, that tells me that, number one, yes, they're understaffed and that needs to be dealt with. But given care and custody of cemeteries to the cemetery department, cemetery commission, and care and custody of the parks properties, which is a bigger undertaking in my feeling,
Agreed.
and moving in that direction, then you have commissions that are focused on those areas. We've got a budget that might have to be augmented some to be able to either hire out to take care of the properties. A lot of basically the mowing and the groundskeeping now is almost all farmed out anyway. And maybe we need to go back to a full-time person working the grounds for parks like we had in the past, and Kayla's position doing the administrative side of it. I mean, I see that as a good direction to develop parks and recreation for the future and for the long term.
Yeah.
I can't speak to cemeteries because I'm not on that board, but I've spent a lot of time with them discussing their needs, and they are of the same mind. So I'm sure there's no argument there. It's just that I found it interesting that the town manager was saying that DPW doesn't have time to do everything because parks and cemetery is pulling them away from their duties. Well, my immediate comment in the back of my head was, well, give it to us and let us
Agreed. Yeah, no, I thought the same thing.
take
When
over.
you're ready, it's just a matter of, convincing the powers that be, which is the town, that this is the best way to deal with it.
I think the more that comments like that come up and issues like that come up, it's not going to be the powers to be that need to be convinced. It'll be the citizens of Lunenburg.
Right. Well, that's what
As
I mean,
they start to understand what the issues are, as they did at town meeting a couple of years ago when they were saying, what's up with parks? You've got, this money, it's not being spent and the parks are falling apart. That was the first many people heard of that.
Yep.
And understood that the Parks Commission didn't have control of that.
Right, and it's part of that was at least my justification when we handed the turf back to the school. We had money that was turned over to free cash every year. I shouldn't say we had money because technically we're not controlling it. It's the DPW department that ends up controlling it. But our that space was still in disarray, and there was enough work that needed to be done. It was a safety issue. So, Ian, you won't get an argument from me on that one. I'm right there with you. And, I said to somebody the other day, I believe the charter says that the day-to-day operations comes to the town manager or who she delegates.
Right.
There's no reason why it couldn't be delegated back to us without having to do a big charter change either. But we can certainly, put that on an agenda and, continue to hash it out as it becomes more clear what's going on with, employee positions within the DPW, whether or not they're able to, find enough people to fill these positions, whether we start feeling the negative effects of them being shorthanded, which to some extent we probably have and have for for a while. I think just going down to Marshall Park and seeing trash on the ground was like, hey, why is this here? It shouldn't be here. I think, so let's add it for an agenda item and we'll try to make some decisions as a group on which direction we want to go in and what we want to push for. And hopefully we're all on the same page and we push for some change and some, being able to maintain our own properties would be huge. So I agree with you there.
Right.
So,
Definitely.
all right. So there's that. The next one that we had was that, if you don't want to tackle this tonight, that's perfectly fine. If you want to have Susanna as part of the conversation, the 2021 Park Commission goals. And, you know, we started having this discussion. We came up with some great ideas during our last meeting. I don't know if you want to continue it tonight or if you want to postpone it until Susanna's here.
Yeah, no, let's move that into a future meeting, in the near future, but a future meeting.
All right. So now we're just down to the public and board comment. I want to make two comments on the board side. One is that I had a conversation, actually had the conversation today with a member of the Conservation Commission who I've had the pleasure of sitting with previously on open space, about parcels of land that are under the care and control of, I believe it's the Board of Selectmen, that may be better fitted to be under the care and control of maybe Conservation Commission or even the Parks Commission. I'd like to see us add an agenda item under that, you know, talking about, are there any parcels of land that we may be interested in that are currently owned by the town? Even if we don't have a plan immediately for them, there are things that we may be interested in, and it could be covered through grants depending on what we wanted to do with it. I thought that it was a great suggestion from the Conservation Commission member that we take a look at that. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to add it to an agenda item at some point this fall to discuss where these lands are, because honestly, depending on where the land is, you may look at it and be like, why would we want that? But if it's a piece of land that maybe is abutting, you know, Whalum, I don't know if we necessarily have any land over there, so I'm just giving it as an example. It may be something that we could use as, you know, some sort of canoe park or, you know, small boating park, something that's carry in, carry out, rooftop park. You know, so it would depend on the type of land that was available within the town that we could ask to be transferred. I believe, if my understanding of his process was correct, it's something that we would decide as a commission, and then it eventually ends up in front of the town for the transfer of the land from the Board of Selectmen to, or general, whatever the general line is for land, to the care and control of another commission. So I have that one. And my next comment is actually about one of the seats that you hold, and that's with the building committee, the TC Passios building committee. I've spent the last week or so giving some thought to TC Passios, and I didn't know if we as a commission wanted to either request Kayla have a conversation with the folks over there, or whether we wanted to formally bring something. I was under the impression when this passed through town meeting a few years ago that it was, or that the approval of creating this, the TC Passios building reuse people, I thought it was a general, this is what we're gonna do, this is the space we're gonna have, that it wasn't being dedicated to specific groups. And now I'm sort of feeling the opposite, and I didn't know if we needed to make our thoughts known on that, if there was something specific that we were looking for, just so that we didn't catch ourselves 3 years from now when the building is repurposed saying, wow, I wish we had asked for classroom space, or I wish we had asked for some gym space, because now there's nothing for us. I don't know what your thought is on that, but something that may be worthy of a discussion going forward. So those are the two things.
Okay, I think I'll withhold comment on anything to do with TCP and do it in a general discussion in a committee meeting. And I would encourage this commission to have somebody talk to the committee.
Okay.
I know Kayla has been looking for at least accessibility to the gym for programming. I don't know any more than that at this point.
Yeah.
And I think there's some definite issues there about who's going to control the scheduling of that space and so on. And that's something that's going to need to be worked out, but that's outside the purview of
The
even the
Yep.
design committee.
Yep.
You know, our charge is, as I see it, for the gym itself is to, you know, do as much rehabilitation as is required for that to be a usable space.
Yep.
But we're not charged with saying who's going to use it and how it's going to be used, other
Right.
than maybe some amenities that could be added to a space to make it multi-use,
Right.
a multi-use facility.
It had, even though I had been following along the last few, probably 6 or 7 weeks or so on the reuse stuff, it really jumped out at me this week when I actually had a conversation with Kayla, and some of the fine details I'm not 100% accurate on them, I don't think. So I don't want to throw out too much, but I know that she had requested use of a classroom space and in gym space, because we don't have any enclosed space. And sometimes recreation programs, it's not suitable to be held in a gymnasium. Maybe it's more of a science type thing. And I know she was met with, well, we have to see who else has requested it. Let me know your dates. And, you know, I just don't want to be overlooked, because not that we're new in town. We're not the new kids in town, but I feel like we are the group in town, like you said previously, you know, people weren't aware of issues within the parks and the parks budget stuff until it was brought to light in a town meeting. You know, I just feel like sometimes because we're a small group and we don't have to make a lot of noise on things, we might get overlooked, and I just don't want to be overlooked. So, but yes, I agree with you. We can certainly have it as part of a general discussion. So I did want to throw those two out there. Do you have any public or board comment that you want to make?
Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 things. First of all, update on the charter.
Yep.
It has been enacted by both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Last I heard, and it may have gotten past the governor's desk by now, it went to the governor for signature on the 20th of August. I have not seen an update since then. So that is, the full approval is imminent. Once he signs it, it comes back to the town for the town clerk to post. Once it's officially posted by the town clerk, it goes into effect. So we are very, very, very close, in my eyes, to having our revised charter in place and in force.
Can you tell me how those seats are going to get filled?
I think we ought to have a discussion about that on a different date.
Okay.
I've made some contact with the town manager, town council, and some comments to the chair of the Board of Selectmen. There is a process that appears to be doable so that we do not have to wait until the May elections to fill the seats. But that's still in the very early stages of discussion.
Okay.
And in any case, nothing can move forward until the charter is completely in force.
Okay, great.
Okay. Let's see. Next on the list is, I just want to make the commission aware that a suggestion, and this was only a suggestion from a member of the Conservation Commission to Open Space, asking for their support as the negotiations for the grow facility up near Walmart are developed and permitting and so on and so forth through planning, that during those negotiations, they tried to get a trail easement or some other agreement to have or continue to maintain an existing trail that would connect the conservation land, and there's a name to it, and it escapes me right at the moment, but the conservation land that is on that would be the west side, I believe, of Chase Road.
Yep.
And connect off of a corner to the Saliva property over on the Walmart side. I thought it interesting that Parks was not also asked to consider that. And I think we should have some input into that as to, you know, how much access we want into a parks property that we really haven't decided how it's going to be used.
Right. Do you want me to add that as an agenda item?
Yeah, that'd be great. And maybe we can get some input from either open space or conservation, because it would basically tie a conservation piece of property to what's presently the care and custody of parks.
Yep. Okay. Sure. That's absolutely, that's a great
Yeah.
agenda item. So yeah, let's keep that.
Yeah.
Did you have another one?
Yeah, one more thing on my list. You had mentioned trash at, you know, the fields and things. You know, as we have at the town beach, we have a very strict carry in, carry out policy. We do not have rubbish receptacles available to the public and the outside of the beach house, and very limited within the beach house just for the staff use for the bathrooms and the limited use of the bathrooms as it is now being run. I'm wondering why we don't have signs up at our parks open facilities, our parks fields, for the same purpose, carry in, carry out, and why we have receptacles at especially Marshall Park. I haven't looked at, actually I was over in Whalum, and best I could tell, there are no receptacles over there and there is no trash.
Yep, there is
The
not.
place was pristine.
Yep.
And
Yes.
when there's a game over there, there are a lot of people on that property.
Yep.
My
guess on that, Dave,
even
is that the
to the point of there is a barrel in the dugout, so that when the Phillies were playing there, all of their drink bottles and everything were overflowing a 55-gallon drum. And to my thinking, that drum, number one, shouldn't even be there, and number two, that entity should have been removing all of that.
So I can absolutely follow up with Jack on it. I did bring up trash to him when I spoke to him last a couple weeks ago, but I can say that is our policy. Our policy has been organizations are responsible for their own trash. So unless a change was made to our usage form that I didn't catch, it says on there that they're responsible for their own. I'm going to guess, at least over at Marshall, that the one that's by the snack shack, the trash can, I think there was a trash can over there, might have been one that was dragged out of the snack shack by the Little League, and it might be a container that they own. At one point, there was a dumpster over there. I don't know if there still is. It was a dumpster that was maintained by the Little League, and I don't know how that bin ended up over at the 90-foot diamond, but it's a conversation I am more than happy to have with both Jack and Kayla, especially since the few policies we do have, that was one of them on our use form, that groups were responsible for their own trash. So, but at the same time, if there's a trash can there and the general public's walking by, they're going to throw their stuff into it. And then whose responsibility does that become? That,
Right.
you know, so no, I'm in agreement with you on that. So we can certainly get that addressed. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
So do you have any?
I think, yeah, I think I'm done. I had a couple other things, but I didn't write them down, and it's been a hectic day. So we'll deal with them sometime in the future.
All right, and
Are you
can
still
always
with me?
send over agenda items.
Yeah, okay.
Do we want to decide on a meeting date, or do we want to do it via email and see when everybody's available?
Yeah, let's try to get a tentative date, because I'd like to keep our momentum rolling.
Yep.
I've got a calendar up on my top of my desk here.
What about the 22nd of September? Or the 14th of September?
The 14th would work better for me.
Okay. All right, let me put that on my calendar, and then I will have to ask. I'll just verify with Susanna, and I need to double check. What other meetings are held on that date. If I don't remember what Mondays are. So I know one time this summer I had sent a request for a Zoom link and was met with, we can't give you one because we're already overloaded. So I'll figure that out. And the other thing is we may be close to being able to meet back in person. I don't know what the deal is going to be on that, but we can figure it out. Do we have any other public comment? We do have one other caller that's called in. I just wanted to make sure they had the opportunity. And I don't see anything. So I will let Susanna know that September 14th is the date that we're aiming for. I will also make sure we can get a Zoom link for that date. And like I always do, usually about a week before, I send out a request for agenda items. Feel free to throw anything out there. And I did keep a running list tonight of what we were looking for agenda items that we talked about tonight.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you just needed it. We've got a number of carryovers from this evening.
Yep, we do. So, all right, if that is all, I will make a motion to adjourn at 7:11 p.m.
Second?
All in favor, roll call. Dave?
Aye.
And an aye for myself. We are done. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too. Take care.
Thanks.